This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. Where you have your hair done or get your hair cut says a lot about you, but it can also say a lot about your block, the neighborhood, and the world. In the new play Blowout by Aguijon Theater, the characters reflect on love, family, and social issues. Here to talk about the play, we have Marcela Muños and Guadalis del Carmen. Welcome.
Hi, thank
you.
Let's start off by talking about you and how you got into the world of theater. Marcela, please.
Well, actually, my mother is an actress and director, so I've kind of been around it my whole life. She's actually the founder of Aguijon Theater, and especially the mission of producing works in Spanish has always been a part of my life. I like to say that I have a 24-year-old sister, and that would be the theater, because that's actually how old we are now. So she's been around my whole life, practically.
Wow.
So, I mean, I guess that is the easiest answer, is that's been sort of the family business, to call it something.
Wow. She started it when you were very young? Or?
Mm-hmm. Well, we first came here from Colombia, and she, being an actress there and a director there, of course, as soon as she was here, she started looking for avenues to continue performing and to express herself through her art. And back in the day, there was a company by the name of Latino Chicago, which was a wonderful company here that produced works with Latino actors, writers, directors. They did their work in English, but eventually they started doing some works in Spanish, and she approached them. She directed and acted in a couple of their productions, and after that she felt there was a need to continue producing these works in Spanish, that there were other actors, directors who also needed that platform the same way as she had gotten, and she started Aguijon to create that forum for Latino artists.
Okay, great. And you, Guadalis?
Well, my route was quite different from Marcela's. I don't really have an extensive theater background. And initially when I started acting, my desire was more film and TV. But it was suggested for me to do some theater to kind of, add that to my resume, to be looked at as more of a serious actor. So I started doing some community theater in Humboldt Park, and I was hooked. First show, I was like, what have I been missing out on? I mean, it's an adrenaline rush that, you feel when you're on stage, and it's, you have to be quick on your feet. And I mean, it really is, it's really amazing being on stage and performing live. It's a much different ambiance than what you would experience being on TV or on film. So yeah, I absolutely love it.
Did your family and friends think you were crazy for going into doing theater or pursuing this acting career?
Friends, not so much. Family, maybe. My mother has always wanted me to be a lawyer.
Wow. Quite vastly different worlds.
Exactly. But she's still very supportive. She comes to all the shows, and, she's always, telling me to, make sure I do my best. And my dad, he's more of the, serious, just get a job that can pay your bills. But they both know that it's something that I'm very passionate about, and they're, as long as you're happy, but make sure you have a job.
It's an interesting way of putting it. And I've always thought of the arts, or most careers in the arts, as a condition or a disease. Am I looking at it correctly? Is it something that you just, once you have it in you, once a bug bites, it's in you, and there's no way you can actually escape it?
We can always call it a superpower, too.
Yes.
Like we were bitten by the spider, and now, so we have this other aspect to ourselves as well. I mean, it is a lot of sacrifice, so I can see this idea of this burden or disease, but I think it also, to be truthful and honest, I think, you write as well. So all three of us are in the arts somehow. It's, you can't get away from it, and it's something that you would love. So yes, you do sacrifice a lot, obviously, time, a lot of times, financial stability, but I think the payoff is pretty great spiritually as well.
Yeah.
Tell me about, you said you had this other sister, Aguijon Theater. How that felt growing up. I mean, those first years when you saw your mom as an actress your entire life, but when she decided to start this theater?
Well, when I was younger, it was it was all pleasure for me. It was all, kind of games and fun. It was the dressing up. I started acting fairly young, so of course if there was a younger character that needed to be fulfilled, there I was. And again, it was all fun and games at the time. Then as I got older and I started becoming more involved in the managing side of the company as well, then yes, that's where the the heavier stuff comes in. And that's why I say it's like a sister or like a sibling or a family member. It's not all fun and games, but you love it and you live and cry and sweat and everything else with that person or this organization.
I guess that's a really good way of putting it. I guess a way to describe it is another relationship you have to care for and take care of.
Absolutely.
How did you finally decide, despite that your mom was very understanding, but your father was very strict, or not necessarily strict, or necessarily, but more traditionalist thinking, and they worry about you taking care of yourself. What moment or what person finally made you decide, I can't let this go?
It's funny because I actually had given up acting for a really long time. So throughout my teenage years, I didn't really do it at all. I mean, in grammar school, grade school, I was really into it. But I gave it up in high school and pretty much college. I did go to college. My parents were like, "You're going to school whether you like it or not." So, but I was working as a dental assistant at an office, and then I actually hired a trainer. And it was through her that she was like, "You need to pursue what you want to do." Like what, she was literally like, "Girlfriend, just follow your dreams." And I never really it was always kind of like, "Oh, it would be nice," but I never pursued it until, she kind of helped me get the self-esteem and believe in myself and think maybe, I should follow my dreams. And after that, I still went to school. I'm a dental hygienist now. That's kind of how I support myself. But I'm a lot more, confident now as, more as an actress, but just in myself. And that has helped a lot in me just kind of, want to pursue my dreams even more.
Great. Now we're going to get to today's topic, your new production, Blowout. We actually have some images we're going to be seeing. Just talk about that and use that as a segue to get into the whole story behind this new play.
Blowout.
So tell me, what are we seeing here?
In that scene, we have a couple of girls that were getting ready for a quinceañera, and we're preparing their hair, and we're just, having our normal conversation at the salon, and the girls participate here and there with it, and I'm talking to my character, Tatiana, and I'm speaking with Michel.
Okay.
And make sure you say that right, because he is not Michael, he is Michel.
Michel, okay. And here?
And that is Tatiana and her boyfriend Marcos.
So he goes to the hair salon as well?
He goes so that I can trim his already very short hair.
For free.
For free on top of that, yes.
Well, your boyfriend in the play doesn't have much hair.
Exactly. And that's one of the things of it too.
Okay.
And in this one, this one we have Caridad, which is one of our clients here with her daughter Delila, and same thing. We're kind of doing their hair and doing the gossip and talking about things of the day and of life, and I think that's Michel back there. And
what's Michel doing?
Michel
Primping, always primping.
Always primping, yeah. And the actor is Oliver Aldape, who has done a phenomenal job with the character. Really brought the character to life.
What word did you say? Crimping or what?
Primping.
What's primping?
Getting pretty, getting ready all the time,
making
sure every hair is in place.
And what is this?
And this is Tatiana, my character Tatiana. Yes. She is very Caribbean, very alive, very loud. So
she's looking very confident there.
Yes. So she has her moments, but overall she's she's a very happy and alive person, and she's always just really expressing that.
And it's interesting that you bring up confident there, because that's actually one of the topics that we explore within the play. As you know, we have these 4 characters, and each one somehow exposes us to different issues. In the case of Tatiana, we have the issue of domestic violence.
Okay.
And how often these women in particular who are living in a situation of domestic violence, there is their true self, or the self that they show the world perhaps, that might be like Tatiana in that picture, very confident, very much a woman who can take care of herself. And something happens when the factor of in this case, her boyfriend Marcos, how it changes her when he walks into the room.
Interesting.
How she is much more subdued than she is, obviously, in that picture that we saw, where she is all confident. And that's one of the things that we wanted to explore. And I think that Guadalis expresses that really well within the play, is this character, because obviously this person is not a victim 24 hours a day.
Right.
There are, many facets to all of us, and we show different faces to the world. But I do like how she shows that change for this particular character when her boyfriend, when her abuser walks into a room, how that completely puts her in a dark space and she becomes someone else completely.
So tell me, that's certainly one of the topics that the social issues you touch on in this play. What inspired the writing? What inspired this story? What stories inspired it? Why do this play and do it in a hair salon?
That's a question for our writer.
I guess the best way, I pretty much grew up going to salons. In Dominican Republic, el salon, the salon, that's part of, a woman's, culture. Like, salsa and arroz, rice, that's all part of the culture. Going to the salon is part of the culture. The men know, oh, it's Friday, oh, she's at the salon. So that's kind of what I grew up with, and, and here as well. And it always fascinated me, the stories that come up at salons. And it's not just in Dominican Republic, I think in all salons, worldwide, it's kind of a place where, men and women go to kind of escape from the day-to-day. And the people that work there, develop such a bond with each other that I found that very interesting. And it's funny because I went to see In the Heights, the musical, and there was a part of the set, there was a salon and a couple of characters that worked at the salon, and I kind of would sit there and I'm like, man, I would love to see a story like at a salon, like what's going on in there. So that kind of inspired the setting of the story. Each of the characters is almost an extension of someone in my family or someone I know.
Really? Have you changed them enough so they won't recognize themselves?
Somewhat. I think each character is kind of a blend of, a bunch of different people and situations. Tatiana is definitely a mix of...
Shh, don't say who.
of, cousins. I can say that. Yeah, cousins.
It's going to be a nice Christmas reunion.
Tatiana's awesome. I love her.
She is awesome.
A full confessional here.
Right. But at the same time, I think that it's a story that, I have a few friends and people that I know that have been victims of domestic violence, and I actually support an organization, Independent Awakening, and they deal with, bringing awareness and enlightenment and empowering women and children that have been victims of domestic violence. So that's definitely something that's close to my heart as well. So I wanted to make sure that we address that. And there's another character that's dealing with Alzheimer's disease. My grandmother passed away years ago from Alzheimer's disease, and I mean it's a disease that has been with us for a really long time, and we still don't fully understand it.
Right. And it's quite a tragic disease in many ways.
It is because
not that others aren't, but this one because you sense
the person is there and isn't.
Right. So you lose them.
Exactly.
It's tragic, and it affects the person and their family on an everyday, very real, moment-to-moment basis.
So so your grandmother was inspiration for that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of my grandmother in it. There's a lot of, other very loving people in my family in that, and in, her story. And I wanted the character that, portrays it, Alba Guerra, who does an amazing job with the character. She treads a very fine line between, obviously being lucid and then kind of going into those moments that scare us, when we see someone that we love going through that.
Right.
And I really wanted to explore that because I think, us from, an understanding or from a lucid point of view, we see them and we're like, oh my gosh. But, you know, to think of what are you actually going through, you know, as someone that has Alzheimer's, it's like, what is in your mind, you know, what are you going through? And I wanted to explore that from their perspective. So I wanted to make sure that that was addressed. And also the issue of gentrification. There's all these like different...
Right.
But it is a comedy. But it
is a comedy.
I know you're thinking Alzheimer's and domestic violence and how could this possibly get a laugh? But I think that's one of the important things that Guadalis has done, is that she's able to obviously see the humor in these situations, which is, I think, very much a factor of all of our lives. Even when we are going through a tragedy, we are still finding the humor, and the everyday moments are very real in there. I think that's one of the things that's very important about this piece. It's not something where you're going to cry the whole way through, because it is a comedy, but it's just exploring those everyday moments.
Yeah. So is it what I'm remembering from my own study in literature and reading plays, is it what Brecht calls the fifth effect, el quinto efecto?
Yeah.
I don't know, am I right? I don't know, where you kind of distract the audience while sneaking in the message, is that how it is?
Yes, and it's not even so much that particular case, because we are dealing with them and they are talking about it, and they do that, but it's just this, obviously both of these things live together. Tragedy and comedy live together, otherwise you really couldn't have one without the other. You really wouldn't know what is funny if you didn't know what wasn't. But it's just part of these characters that they're able to live with these situations.
I think it's also really interesting when you go to, especially like going, you know, to Dominican Republic, and you go to like the really poor parts, and there's still merengue playing, there's still bachata playing, there's still music, there's still laughing, but you know, it's like, okay, what am I gonna eat today? Let's play bachata in the meantime, you know what I mean? Like, and you can go, and I think that that's the case in any country, you know, you can go to like the poorest places, but you'll still find, you know, life. You'll still find, you know, laughter, joy, exactly, you know, and the little things that make you happy. And I think that, you know, and for me, like, you know, I cope with things too, with comedy as well. And I thought that it would be really interesting to mix, you know, the really comedic parts of life with these very serious issues.
So how do you explore the other topics through your other characters? You have your character Michelle, right?
Yes.
Not Michael, Michelle.
Not Michael, Michelle.
Michelle, oh, sorry.
Michelle.
Michelle.
Well, he is really coming to terms with accepting himself. Which I think is more of a universal theme, and not just something within the gay and lesbian community or the LGBT community. I think that's something that we can all identify with, you know, really accepting who you are as a person, and, you know, going on with that, you know, and going from there with that.
Touches on the following your dreams and your own path, even if it's not the thing that maybe your parents think is what's right for you.
Exactly.
And it's not, and specifically with this character, we're exploring his sexuality and issues that he has with his family because they are not accepting of that. But again, that could be a metaphor for anything. You know, we have the case, you know, of it's not something that your parents thought would be the thing for you, but it is your path and it's the one that you have to follow, and it could be the same for any of us in any situation.
Right, definitely. So those are the three characters. Who's the fourth character?
The fourth character is
Doña Gloria.
Doña Gloria, and she
What a name.
Exactly.
And she is the owner of Gloria's Hair and Makeup.
Exactly.
Like that.
Hair and makeup. Just
it's
how
spelled phonetically in Spanish.
Yes.
Hair and makeup.
Hair and makeup.
And the play itself is set in West Town, which is the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I pretty much saw all the changes.
The gentrification.
The gentrification. And that's what she's dealing with. And she's kind of fighting to keep her salon, but she's also kind of just, you know, she's at the brink of giving up because, you know, the taxes are going up and the property taxes, and you know, she doesn't know what she can do anymore in construction, and just, you know, the neighborhood is changing and she's not necessarily keeping up with it. And her issue is, you know, figuring out, do I stay, do I go, you know, what am I going to do?
And she addresses that directly, and how do we see it in the other characters too?
Well, they're all essentially affected by, you know, these changes. Some are a little bit more embracing of the changes, while others are, you know, more hesitant to really accept, you know, modernization of things.
And we also see the reality of what happens when these small businesses close. You know, it's not just that this particular hair salon is no longer there, it now affects the people who work there and the community that has been visiting this place for so many years. So I think that's also one of the avenues that you explore in the play, is that it's not just, oh, will she close her shop or not, is how does it affect the community? How does it change the community?
Okay, now, during the process of writing, who helped you edit this play, and how did you talk about it? Because one of the questions that always comes up in my mind when I think about Latino characters or the portrayals of Latinos is stereotypes.
Exactly.
How do we convey stories in a small microcosm, which is a play or a book or whatever, and not stereotype, but not just give that type, but give other types?
You know, it's very interesting because in speaking with Marcela about the play, that was one of my main concerns. I don't want any of the characters to turn into caricatures. That was my fear. And especially with Michel's character, I was petrified with him looking like a caricature. But I think when you watch the play, the way that the characters are with each other, it's so real that they don't, they look like, extravagant people that you may know. So they don't look like caricatures. They look like real people that you can come across, at work or at home, or a relative that you might have. But I worked really closely with Aguijon Theater, with Marcela, Rosario, and the actors themselves. I mean, I feel like I did write the play, but I had a lot of collaborative effort with everyone in it. And I wanted to get real authentic, Argentinian story, a real authentic Mexican story, a really authentic Puerto Rican story, and then an authentic, Dominican perspective. I wanted to make sure that each character was authentically represented, and their background really came out in the character. And Aguijon Theater really, really helped a lot with that.
So, because it wasn't just a wash of what I guess the mainstream considers Latino, right? But
see, and I'm glad you touch on that, because one of the missions at Aguijon is exactly that, to explore also the differences and similarities within our community, because you hear Latinos, right? And so the three of us are sitting here, and we're actually, from three completely different backgrounds as far as the countries of origin, whether it's our parents or ourselves, but we are seen as Latinos, right? So yes, we are seen as that, and that's actually an identity that we can live in this country, right? If we go back to our original countries, we are just whatever we were there. We're not thinking I'm a Latino, right? But here you're suddenly a Latino, So we've always wanted to explore that at Aguijon. It's been our mission from the beginning, exploring those similarities, those differences that make us who we are, and that make us both individual and part of this larger group of Latinos in the United States. This play in particular, as you mentioned, we have a Mexican character, an Argentine character, a Puerto Rican, Dominican. Those are our four main characters. That's also what our four main actors are. And it's the reality for us as a company. In any given production, in this one, we even have someone from Albania. And we have, Mexican and Cuban and Puerto Rican and Colombians all working together, collaborative. And that's one of the I think one of our strengths, and also what we have always been interested in exploring, is those differences within us that don't make us just this Latino character that we're supposed to fit into.
Right, and you also have the Chicago character, the
city itself.
The city itself, and the salon, and how that's being affected.
And there's there's also characters that come in as well, that are the clients. We have Mili Santiago, who's doing a really phenomenal job with the characters that she has. And
so she's doing several characters.
She's doing two characters, yes. And she's, really showing a really good contrast between them. But as Marcela said earlier, how these businesses really affect the community and not just the people that own them or work in them. And within the play, we have, it's very interesting because there's like so many elements, but we also have the element of, the different generations and how they relate to each other. We have two young girls that are coming in for their quinceañeras, but they barely speak Spanish. You know what I mean? Like there's that aspect of it, and little touches here of like the Latino identity.
And even how within our community we judge each other, I might think the way I do things or the way my parents or grandparents would do it is the right way to do it, and I judge you even though we're all supposed to be in this boat where we're all Latino and united, but we explore that. And I think the fact that it explores those differences as well as similarities is what keeps these characters from becoming caricatures.
Right.
Right. One final question because we're out of time. Why Aguijon?
Aguijon.
The stinger, right?
That's
Why
correct.
not
the
Aguijon?
stinger.
That's
I'm curious.
My mom actually started another theater company in Colombia back in the late 60s, early 70s when everything was in upheaval everywhere in the world, but especially in Latin America. So the plays that they produced were very political and very much the idea was to sting the consciousness of their audiences.
Okay.
Once she started the company here, and this was 24 years ago when doing theater in Spanish was not a
Common,
very common thing
or
at all.
accepted.
It was rather a crazy thing. So it was almost a political statement just to be doing something like this in Spanish, and it was that way for many years. I mean, now we're glad to see that there are many other avenues for what we do. We don't feel like the only crazy ones in the city.
Great story. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to use CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.